Hey everybody, this is Games Plus James, and welcome back to our 2D platformer tutorial here in Unity, where we're going to make a fun little basic platformer game and have some learning, fun, and experiences. So, in today's episode, we're going to cover a little fix for jumping our player and moving our player around, and we're also going to cover picking up coins and adding points and all that fun stuff that you get in most basic platformer games. So, the first thing we're going to deal with, if we hit this play button here, this is a thing that a couple of people have mentioned that I was planning on getting back to and discussing some more, but now seems like the perfect time. So, you run along, you're jumping, that's all grand, but if, for example, you happen to jump and, you stick to the wall, you're just kind of stuck here. If you press towards it, you just get stuck on the wall. And there's a very, very simple way to fix that. So what we have to do is, we go to our materials here, and we'll create a new physics 2D material. Yes, that's what we need to create, and we'll call this player material, and we'll put the friction on this down to 0. So what this, and we're going to apply this to the player, and what this will do is it'll make sure that the player won't stick to any objects around them. So what we do is we go to a material here, and for some reason it's missing. We go player material, perfect, and then if we hit play, once it loads up, here we go. So now when we jump against the thing, see, now you just kind of slide up and down against it like that. But because of the way we've created the character controller, it does some strange things that we don't intend on. So if we're moving right, I let go of right now. The character still keeps sliding along, because all we're doing is setting the velocity of the player to be a certain value, and that will slowly decay over time. As you can see, he's kind of looks like he's getting slower, but I'm not holding the keys down anymore, and it keeps sliding right and right. So that's not really very much what we want to happen in the game. So we have to make it so that the character will stop moving when he's not, when you're not holding a key down. So to fix that little issue that we've got there, we're going to go to our Playercontroller Script. We'll open that up here in Mono Develop. Yes, I already have it open here. Okay, so it's going to be nice and simple. It's very easy. It's going to involve us just changing this little bit of code here. We have a little bit for our input and our keys, and we're going to add another value that we're going to use. So we're going to add a public not public. This will be private, because we won't be able to modify this from within Unity. So it'll be private float. We'll call it move velocity, like that. And what we'll do is, we will, before we enter any key code, or before we press any buttons to control the sideways movement, what we'll do is we'll set move velocity. Just bear with me for a second. Move velocity. Velocity. If I could spell, we'd be onto a winner. Move velocity is equal to 0f. So that means every update loop, it'll start off by setting our move velocity to 0f. Now, obviously, that won't do anything to our player just yet, because that's just a random number value. Not random, a very specific number value, but anyway. So what we're going to do is comment the 2 bits out here that are within our moving our player left to right, because we're not going to use this to move the player. What we're going to do is, if the key is pressed down to move the player right, we're going to set our move velocity equal to move speed. So it'll put I think our move speed is 5 or something like that, so that'll put 5 into that variable there. And if we want the character to move left, we'll have move velocity is equal to minus move speed. And as you can see, we were using move speed in the rigid body thing here, and the same here. So what we want to do, rather than having to add the rigid body 2D, have the same bit of code there being doubled over and being useless, kind of, after those bits are done, we will say rigid body 2D dot velocity is equal to new vector 2, and instead of move speed, we'll put move velocity in there, and then stick with rigid body 2D dot velocity dot y. And now, so what'll happen here is, if there's no input being pressed, it'll set the move velocity to 0, and then this bit will set the character movement to 0. So it'll instantly stop him when you're not pressing any keys to move left or right. And if any key is pressed, then it'll take that value and it'll move the character. So we've saved that. We'll go back to the game here and we'll hit play. Okay, and then see, we start moving. Player no longer slides around all over the place. He moves perfectly. When he leans against something, perfectly fine. He just slides back down, and that's exactly what we want to happen. But there is one other little thing that this does. So if you kill our player, he keeps sliding along because we're not stopping the movement, because the player script is being automatically disabled. But the camera is still attached to the player, and that's still kind of drifting through the world. So we need to fix that in the level manager. So we'll open our level manager, have it open here. And what we will simply do here is just say player.rigidbody2d.velocity is equal to, not even new vector, we can just go vector2.0. And vector2.0, what that'll do, that'll set x to be 0 and y to be 0. This is a handy little short way of doing it rather than have to write out the full thing every time. And just so we know, that little bit of code here is going in the respawn player function. Just after the player is disabled and his visual stuff is disabled. So that'll stop his speed and stop him dead. So we save that, pop back into the game, and now when you kill him, the camera stops and everything works perfectly. So there we go, that's the basic movement that we have for the player, and that's all. It feels much better now because you obviously don't want to be stuck on objects when you got into them. So on to the main thing of this episode, which is pickups and coins and all that, adding points to the player and all that fun stuff. So what we're going to do first, we need to have an area on the screen where our score will be shown. So what I think that's recently been added to Unity is the new kind of UI system, which is very, very simple and very handy compared to the old way you used to have to do it. It's really, really simple. So what we'll do is go to Game Object, UI, and we'll hit Text. So I'll create a new text object. You can see it down here in the game screen. But in the scene view, you have to scroll up and zoom out to be able to see how big the screen space, it's called, is. And it's quite handy. So then what you do is here, you move it around in here, and it'll move around within this box, and it'll move around to a relative position on the screen. And there's this thing here that is anchors the text. So at the moment, if you can see, it's anchored to the center of the screen. So what will happen is if we make this a full screen thing, now the text is just there. Because the way it works it out by saying, okay, the distance from here to the center of the screen, let's just call that 50. So if we make it a big full screen game, then it's still going 50 away from the center, but now the edge of the screen is much, much further away, and that kind of just ends up looking weird. So what we want to do, because we're going to have this item in the top left corner, we're going to set this to be anchored at the top left corner here. You can see with the little red dot. So now, if we do the same again, we'll maximize this screen. Now you can see the text stays up in the corner, perfect, just where we want it. And we'll also change the color of this text because it doesn't really stand out very much there. So if you click on the color bar here, we'll just drag this up to white. Now it looks more obvious and easy to see. I'm happy enough with that font, don't need to worry too much about that. We're going to change the text here to be score : and then what we're going to do is right click on our text there and we'll duplicate it, or else you can click on it and press Ctrl and D, and we're going to delete the score from that bit. We're going to type 000, and we're going to change the alignment to be right aligned. So now we know the text is lined up perfectly with that, and we're going to automatically generate the scores as we add them to the game. So we'll just hit the save. Always remember to save things as you're going along through the game. So the way we're going to manage adding the points to the player and all that fun stuff will be through another little score manager script here. So we'll create C# script, if I could say the words. Score manager is what we will call it. If we could spell the word, it'd be nice too. Score manager. There we go. And we'll open that up in MonoDevelop. Okay, we'll just delete these little bits of code here because we're not going to worry too much about them just yet. And what we're going to take advantage of here in the score manager will be some static variables, which means that they can be accessed from anyone. They don't necessarily have to find the game object and stuff like that to in order to function in the game, because we've done that a few times now. We've done get component of a certain thing, and that'll find the object in the scene and whatnot. But we're going to do something a little bit different here. So what we're going to do is public static int score. So that'll create the score variable, and that'll be accessible by anyone else without having to go to the score manager object in particular. We're going to go text, and we're going to do a semicolon there. Now, as you can see, this text has gone red. So this is going to be a Unity UI specific thing, and it's not included as a default thing when you start a new script. So what we have to do is below using system.collections, we will add in using Unity engine .ui. Put our semicolons, and what that does is it imports all the UI bits of code that we would need to reference throughout Unity, or throughout our script. So as you can see, it's gone blue now, so that means we know it's working perfectly, and that's all good. So we'll put our start function here, and we'll just open and close some brackets. Okay, so within this function, what we're going to do is we'll get our text object, and because this script will be attached to the score object that we just created a few minutes ago, we'll say text is equal to get component text. So that'll find the text area that we already have on the object, and it'll automatically set the score to 0, and that'll be the default starting score for the game. So then we'll go to void update, create our brackets, create our little curly brackets, and within this function, basically all this is going to do is when it's being updated, it'll just adjust the score that we see on the screen, and also it'll check that the score isn't below 0, because we don't want our players to have end up with minus 1,000 points or anything like that. So what we'll do is if score is less than 0, then score is equal to 0. And then we'll go text dot text, so that'll access the text on the object that we've already got the component of, is equal to, and we have to put two little quote marks there to ensure that we're starting a string of text here. So text.text is equal to score, or else it'll be trying to convert the int and it'll throw problems. It's just the simplest way of handling that little thing. So that's fine. That's how our score will update on the screen. And what we want to do next is add a variable that can be accessed by anyone else to add points to our score. So what we'll do is we'll go public static again, and static means it can't be. There will only be one instance of it running at any time. Basically, is what it says. There won't be two. There won't be two score managers in the game. There's only one in each level. So public static void. We call this add points. And what we're going to do is say int. No, not add points. We'll say int points to add. So basically, whatever you put between these little brackets here is something that can be passed in by whatever function, whatever script calls this. So say we're going to create a coin object in a little bit, and that will give a player, say, 50 points. And within our script, we'll have add points, and then within the brackets, we'll put in 50, say. And then that will pass that into this script, and then we'll be able to use that number to add points to a player. And it's very simple how we add our points. So basically all we do is we take our score that we started off with. So score not even equals score plus equals, which is a simple way of adding on any other value to whatever value you have. So score plus equals points to add. It's very straightforward, and that's all we really need in that little section there. And we're going to create one more public static void reset. Now this is something that we might want to use in the future, and we might not. but it'll be something. Say if you wanted your players to lose all their points when they die, you could call this little function here. So what we're going to do here is just set score is equal to 0. That won't be called every time. You might not even want to call it at all. But we'll just add it in there because it's nice and simple to add. So convert that. That's fine. We'll go back to our game. We'll find these two text things. We'll actually rename these as well. So we'll call this first one score title, and this one score counter. And on our score counter, we will add that component we just created. So that will be our score manager script. There we go. Perfect. So now if we hit play, we should see this 0, 0, 0 change back to just 0. Because that's our default value. Yep, there you go. See, 0. But unfortunately, just yet, we don't have anything to give ourselves some points in the game. So let's fix that right now. If we go to our art folder here, and we go to our image that has all our drawings on it, basically. We go to Sprite Editor. We've got 3 little coin objects here. And we're going to just take the first one. We'll just call this coin underscore 1. The other ones are there to add a little bit of animation, but we'll deal with that at some other point. For now, we're just going to worry about adding the points to our game. So we'll just hit the arrow here to open things out. So we've got coin underscore 1. And in our scene view here, we're just going to zoom back into a reasonable view of our player and whatnot. So we'll get our coin here, grab it, drop it onto the scene, put it round about there. That seems like a relatively good space for it. So we're going to have to make this coin collectible. So what we'll do is we'll add a box collider, much as we have done with our checkpoints and stuff. We'll add our box collider. No, actually, sorry, no, we won't add a box collider. It's a circular object, so let's add a circle collider. We'll make it a trigger. So now, whenever the player comes in contact with it, he won't be stopped by it, but he'll be able to detect it, or it'll be able to detect him more specifically. So now what we're going to do is add another script to this coin that will handle adding points and being collected by the player and all that fun stuff. So we'll create a C# script, and we call this one coin pickup. Once again, we'll open it up in monodevelop. And again, this little bit of script is going to be relatively simple also. So we'll just delete that. So the first thing we want to do, we want to have the coin, we want to be able to decide how much our coins are going to give to our player. So we'll say public int points to add. And I don't think I mentioned why we're using ints rather than floats for our score. But basically, very simply, ints are only whole values of numbers, so they'll only be like 1, 2, 3, 4, -7, whatever, stuff like that. Whereas floats will be 7.65, whatever. We're not going to have a situation where we need our points to be like the player has 7.6 points. That's not something we're interested in. So it's much easier to just stick to int for points. It's a much more kind of common thing to use anyway. And then to detect whether the player has entered the zone and whether to give some points, we'll go void on trigger enter 2D, and then collider 2D other, which is the basic on trigger enter default stuff that you need whenever a trigger is detected in 2D. And then we'll go if other, so that's the other game object that entered the trigger, dot get component player controller. So if other has the component player controller, which the only other that will have that will be the player. So if that is true, so if that's equal to null, so basically what this is checking, if that thing isn't on the other. If that is not on the other, then we'll go return. So say we have an enemy character wandering around, and that character walks into our coins. We don't want him to be able to pick up coins. We only want the player to be able to collect them. So if that thing is null, then we'll just say return, and that'll cancel the script, and it'll just go back to doing whatever it's doing. But if it does have the component, it'll continue onwards. So then what we'll do is we'll call from our score manager. So that function that we made static back here, the add points function. Now we can access that without having to find the object in the scene. So we can just go score manager dot add points, and we have our public int up here, points to add. So we're going to pass that into it. So whatever value we give that, that'll be sent to the score manager. And next thing we'll do is we'll simply just destroy game object. So that'll remove the coin as soon as it's picked up, and it'll give our points value to the player. So we'll save that, go back into the game, go back to our coin, and now we want to add that component to the coin. If this button will work, here we go. So coin pickup, I'm going to add that script on there, and we'll say 100 points you get for picking up a coin. So now if we hit play, once it loads, well, it helps if you don't kill your character. We walk along here, walk over here, jump up and grab it, and there we go, 100 points for the player. That's exactly what we want. But you might want the player to lose some points when he gets killed, because at the moment, you get killed, there's not really any punishment for that, but you want the player to feel consequences for losing his lives or whatever. So rather than just leaving at 100, if we go to our level manager, and level manager is where we have our respawn player function. So we go to level manager, and we'll create a new public int here, and we'll call this so we'll call it point penalty on death. So that'll be a value that whenever the player dies, he'll have these points taken away. So then down here, after the player has been killed, we'll simply go again, we'll just go score manager dot add points, and then rather than adding the points, we want to take away points, so we'll just say minus point penalty on death. You can do that, or you could leave it as a whole value, and within the inspector you could say minus 100 points or whatever you want to make it. So now once this compiles, we should have an extra little slot here on our level manager. So there we go, point penalty on death, and we'll say 50 points rather than making you lose 100. We'll just take away 50. So now what we'll do here, we'll just duplicate this coin, pop him over there, pop him there, and we'll just select the three of them, and we'll duplicate all three of them again, and we'll just drag him over here. Let's put him here, say, and we'll duplicate him one more time, put him here, and we hit that play button. And now, as you wander through the game, we go up here, we'll collect a few points. Yay, we got 200 points. Yay. Oh no, we've lost 150 of them. But there you go. That's the basics of how to create your little point system in the game. You can go around collecting as many points as you want. Much like we've done with killing the player, you can create a little particle effect like that. You could do the same thing with the coins if you wanted to. Create a little, for example, a yellow particle effect, and instantiate it the exact same way the player has done, which you should be able to do. So I would recommend go ahead and try and do that yourself, and we will look at doing that in a future episode. But thanks for watching, everybody. I will be back with more tutorials in the very near future. Keep your eyes peeled, and we'll always have more updates coming along the way. So yes, thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll be back soon with more tutorial goodness.